How's everybody doing today, bro? It's a beautiful day today. It's a little rainy. It was raining. Today's the Sabbath, and I was driving through the Jewville too. All the Jews are out. They're all walking around. They're not driving like me. Man, how dumb is that? You can't drive on Saturday because the Torah says you're not allowed to start a fire. So when you start a car on a Saturday, you know, it's an internal combustion engine, you light a fire. Like, how dumb is that? Handicapping yourself for your religion. That's why Jesus was against Judaism, because it's illogical. It's like the old you put a stick in a bike tire meme. But that's what a Jewish religion does to the Jews. They're like self-sabotagers. You can't do nothing on the Sabbath. They turn into a bunch of weirdos on the Sabbath. And look, it's crazy too that these Jews, they follow all these strange laws. They follow all these weird laws from the Old Testament. And here it is, the Old Testament's not even old. I mean, it's old. It's a couple hundred years older than the New Testament. A lot of people don't know that, guys. The Old Testament is only a couple hundred, well, I say about 300. I would say the majority of the New Testament comes from the 2nd century AD, not the 1st century. I would say the majority of the New Testament, in the form that we have it, today, comes from the 2nd century. I would almost say mid-2nd century. A lot of it. I see no evidence to the contrary. And so, I would say most of the Old Testament was probably written around, you know, to be nice, I could say 300 BC. That's way too early. That's too close to the time of Alexander. So I would say around 200 BC, just, you know, a nice even date. Probably around 140 BC, let's be honest. But about 200 BC. That's probably when the Torah was compiled and written. It was published in Hebrew and in Greek. Okay. What is the oldest copy of the Old Testament we have, guys? The oldest fragments of the actual scriptures from the Old Testament is in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, some people have speculated those are all fake. I think some of them might be real. Besides, those are the oldest pieces and fragments are copied. Not even whole copies. Maybe some. Nearly whole copies of Isaiah or something. But the Dead Sea Scrolls, that's the oldest witness that you have to the Old Testament, is the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's no older witness than the Dead Sea Scrolls. There are no surviving manuscripts of the Old Testament older than the Dead Sea Scrolls. That's just fact. And they just recently discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls within the past 100 years. Or most of them. So, it goes back to the title of my video, guys. Did Moses really exist? Now, there's no evidence of the Torah before like 200 BC. That's just facts. There's no, people could bring out the silver prayer scrolls. No, those are not word for word, not even close. It's kind of generally, sort of, resembles a couple scriptures in the Bible. But if you squint hard enough, you can see the similarities. But no, there's no evidence of the Old Testament before 200 BC. So what about the evidence of Moses? Moses is the one who supposedly wrote the Torah. Now, if you're dedicating your whole life to keeping this law written by Moses, would you not first just want to verify that Moses was a real person first? And that it's not all made up and you're just following a bunch of made up nonsense? But essentially that's what the Jews are doing. Because there's no proof that Moses is a real historical person. Now you will see Christian apologists, all kind of Christians, and even Jews, they'll get on YouTube and the internet and they'll make a video saying, oh, I discovered Moses, Senseret. Or they'll start just selecting random pharaohs be like, oh, this is Moses. No. How come the Old Testament does not tell us the name of the pharaoh of the Exodus? It doesn't tell you the name of any pharaoh until later, like, what, Pharaoh Necho? How come the name of the pharaoh is never mentioned in Genesis or in Exodus? You know why? Because they could not put a name on the pharaoh. Then people would investigate the story and discover that it was all made up. It's a fictional story. It's fictional mythology. Yeah, and it uses real places and real geography. We have plenty of fiction like that in our own time, guys. Spider-Man takes place in Manhattan. All right. But there's no proof of a guy named Moses before Hellenistic times. The first person whoever wrote about Moses is who? Hecataeus of Abdera, possibly, is recorded in Diodorus of Sicily. He talks about Moses. He said Moses came out of Egypt and he was the leader of a rebel band of lepers. He said Moses led an army of lepers, which is very strange. And it also spoke of Cadmus living during the same time as Moses. No, Cadmus, that's where I got my name from. Cadmus and Dan also lived in Moses during the same time as Egypt. Danaus. That's where you get the tribe of Dan. But Dan and Cadmus and Moses, they all lived in Egypt, and they all left Egypt at the same time, according to Diodorus of Sicily. Cadmus went and founded Thebes in Greece. Danaus, he founded the city of Argos. Moses founded Jerusalem. Well, he didn't make it to the Holy Land. Yahweh promised him the Holy Land, but he never got to see it. Because Yahweh's a trickster. He be lying to you. He pulled tricks on you. Well, it's all made up. But anyway, so guys, the story of the Exodus, the splitting of the sea, that is what you call a foundation myth. And all the nations in the ancient world has some kind of spectacular foundation myth. Like Cadmus, I believe did not Cadmus when he founded the city of Thebes, I believe he threw rocks over his shoulder and all the rocks turned into men or something like that. I forget exactly. But you have a lot of fictional mythological stories of how these ancient cities were founded. And the Israelites are no different. You cannot split a sea with magical powers. That's not real, guys. That's freaking mythology. No, if he had God, with God all things are possible. Yeah, we heard that a million times. With God all things is possible. Just not the splitting of the sea because they made it up. Okay, with the God of the Jews it's possible to make up crazy stories and have everybody believe it. Because that's what Jews do. They lie. The father of lies. The father of the devil. John 8:44. Ye are of your father the devil. Who's the devil? The devil's Satan. The devil has horns. He's no good. The devil means the accuser. The accuser. Now, who's called the accuser in the Bible? Moses. He accuses you with the law. And Moses has horns. All through Christian history and Christian art, Moses was always depicted with horns. Why? If you get on Wikipedia, look up horned Moses. You can do a search with AI, whatever. Do a search on horned Moses and research why does Moses have horns. Now, the first thing they will tell you is that Moses having horns was a mistranslation. Yeah, sure, now you're saying Jerome was a moron. He didn't know what he was doing. But you're saying, no, it's not a mistranslation. It was translated perfectly. Moses' face horned. He had horns coming out his head, looking like the devil. Who else the devil has horns, right, guys? So if the devil has horns, if you want to find the devil in the Bible, find the guy with horns. Who has horns in the Bible? All through Christian history, we've been shown pictures of the devil with horns. In the Bible, who has horns? Moses. Who accuses you with the law? Moses. Who did the Jews worship? Well, they worship Yahweh, who was actually Moses. Because Yahweh, yeah, every time it says, thus saith the Lord, it was really, thus saith Moses. Well, did Moses even exist? So that makes it even worse. So it's a guy pretending to be Moses, and Moses is pretending to be Yahweh. So you got you got multiple layers of pretending and multiple layers of deception. All right, so again, Jews, why would you ever follow the Torah? Moses probably is not a real historical person. That's why the Pharaoh is never mentioned in the book of Genesis or Exodus. Why? How come the Pharaoh's never mentioned in Exodus? Because they didn't want to associate it with any particular Pharaoh, because people would research it and discover the whole story was made up. Obviously. So they intentionally left out the names of the pharaohs. They give you the names for almost every other king. Look, the authors of the Torah, they could remember the names of every person that ever lived. They know the names of the first people that ever lived. They could remember the names of Adam and Eve and Peleg and Methuselah. They could remember the first humans that ever lived. But just a few hundred years ago, or they said Moses wrote the Torah, so he had to write it during his lifetime. So Moses forgot the name of the Pharaoh just within years of the event happening. No, Moses did not write the Torah. Hebrew did not even exist when they claimed he wrote it. Or the Hebrew script didn't exist, that's for sure. Besides, the Apocrypha says Ezra wrote the Bible, and the Jews will teach you it was actually Ezra who wrote the Old Testament. It wasn't Moses. They had lost the law when they went to captivity, supposedly, allegedly, when the Israelites went into captivity into Babylon, they lost all their laws. Everything was destroyed. So Ezra, he did some good drugs. It's like, nah, he ate some flowers or something. No, but he's getting high, let's be honest. It's all made up. Ezra's probably not real either. But Ezra, he had a vision, guys. God gave him a vision. And he just rewrote all the books because God told him. That's definitely believable, because with God's all things possible. I mean, whatever. You guys believe what you want. I believe what I want. So yeah, guys. What was I saying? So Ezra supposedly wrote the Old Testament. That's what Jews believe. They say Moses wrote it, but Ezra channeled it. He had to rechannel it and redo it because they lost it. So yeah, by my estimations, I really don't think Moses was a real historical person. And that's the biggest difference between Judaism and Christianity, guys, is the founding figures of Judaism and Christianity are totally different. First of all, Moses says to hate, to curse, and to destroy your enemies. Jesus says to bless your enemies, to love your enemies, turn the other cheek. They could not be any farther apart. They're totally different. Jesus and Moses are like day and night, like Jesus and the devil. Moses has horns. Okay, who do you think the devil? Who does blood sacrifices in the Old Testament and sprinkles blood on people like a devil worshiper? Moses. So people get mad at me for this, but hey, guys, I didn't put horns on Moses. The Bible did that. The Catholic Church did that. All right. I didn't start the Catholic Church. I'm not even a member. But they got Moses with horns. All right. But he's the accuser. He accuses you. And he does blood sacrifices. Moses took the blood and sprinkled it upon the people, said, this is the words of the covenant, the blood covenant. A blood covenant. That's devil worshiping. And he has horns. It's adding up, guys. And he says to kill people. He says the genocide. This guy ain't no good. All right. So what was I going to say? Yeah, so Moses and Jesus could not be any further apart. First of all, there is zero proof that Moses is a real person that actually lived. While Jesus was clearly a real historical person. Jesus is a real person. So Judaism is based on lies, while Christianity is based on truth. Judaism's founding father, Moses, he gave the law. So he's the most important pharaoh. He was a pharaoh, supposedly, allegedly. the Moses is the most important prophet of Judaism. Like, they don't have Jesus. Moses is their guy. Okay? Our guy's Jesus. So Moses never existed. So Judaism is based on lies. All right? Moses never existed. It's based on a fake person. While Christianity is based on Jesus Christ. All right? The greatest man to ever live. A real historical person. Nobody ever doubted the existence of Jesus. All right? If Jesus never existed, how come none of his opponents or none of his critics in the first or second century said he never existed? Like Celsus. Celsus couldn't stand Jesus. He couldn't stand the Christians, hated him. But he never accused Jesus of never existing. If he knew Jesus never existed, he would have mentioned it. He would have said it. He would have used that to his advantage to further push his own agenda. Okay, but no, he never said that. He assumed Jesus was a real historical person and the founder of what we call Christianity. All right, Jesus is a real historical person. Moses is not. I'm gone.